Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 219. Third day of the third month. You have made promises, Yuan Kun said slowly, that you will guard the divine land and watch the fall and rise of dynasties, one for Bai Qi and the other for Li Longji. The corpse ghost king just stood there majestically. His tall figure was like a mountain with his sleeves fluttering in the wind. Yuan Kun reached out his hand, took off his blindfold and said seriously, "But how many humans would still remember your kindness?" In an instant, time flowed. The scene of the entire Ming Hall and even the whole city of Luoyang changed rapidly, depicting the changes through the long river of time. Hung Jun left the Tenli of the heavenly river and stood on the bridge. The sun rose and set. It was as if the hand of the Creator seemed to have heavily slapped the hourglass that ruled time in the divine land. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter, one season replaced one after another rapidly. Hung Jun turned and looked around. Then, all the Yao outside of the Ming Hall seemed to be inside a grand dream. At that moment, Yuan Kun pushed his powers to the limit. Time passed by in a blink of an eye. The exorcists all woke up in the middle of this dream and was in disbelief. Countless scenes came and went. Battlefields that were full of killings have turned their eyes into blood red. The exorcists of the past dynasties were fighting Yaoguai everywhere. High-rise buildings rose up from the ground, huge iron birds roared past, iron carriage without horses drawing them whistled through. Bridges were built and roads extended in all directions. The trees in the forest collapsed one after another. Members of the Yao races fled in all directions. Weird hanging towers rose into the sky, the concrete trucks buzzed and the line of flat buildings were destroyed one after another. The Yao transformed into their human forms, but they were subdued by the exorcists with magic, dragged away and burned to death. 8,000 years later, Yuan Kun's emotionless voice resounded in the minds of both Yao and human races inside the city of Luoyang. The exorcism department will flourish. The Yao race will no longer have a place of their own in the divine land. This is what will happen in 1,000 years. Yuan Kun said with a majestic voice. No Yao would be able to escape from the hands of the human who would occupy all of the divine land. Hung Jun could no longer make sense of what he was seeing. There were too many strange things like iron-armored mechanisms that rampaged and wreaked havoc in the divine land. The Yao retreated again and again until the land that they could live in kept on shrinking. Until those strange tall buildings were built in front of their sacred land. The Yao race will lose their homes and will be forced to live in seclusion deep in the mountains and forest. What follows them will only be despair. The exorcists encircled the holy land of Tianluo Mountain. Yu Zayun transformed into the nine-tailed celestial fox and escaped with a black fox and a white fox who were still in their swaddling clothes. The blood that burst out of the nine-tailed celestial fox's heart dyed its white fur red. The Yao fled to the Zoage Basin in the west. In the snowstorm sacred mountain, they walked into the ruins of the Temple of the Thousand Yao and guarded the lost temple, shivering in the cold wind. Hung Jun closed his eyes and heard Yuan Kun as if he was speaking next to his ears. This is the future and the destiny of our entire race. The Kun god's spell disappeared, and the ruined city of Luoyang returned to its original state. In the ruined Ming Hall, Yuan Kun put back his blindfold. Yu Zayun and the corpse ghost king remained silent. Qing Xiang said slowly, "Today you have compassion in your heart because the Yao race is more than 1,000 times stronger than the human race. In the future, we will all be dead. When the human race change dynasties, gratitude and hatred will be wiped clean. When has the human race ever had the slightest bit of compassion towards the Yao race? It doesn't matter if this is going against the will of the heavens," Yuan Kun continued and said slowly, "it doesn't matter if we overestimate ourselves. This is our only chance. If the two of you still think that our paths are different and that we can't work together, then let's fight for our respective leaders." Yu Zayun looked to the corpse ghost king. The corpse ghost king did not express an opinion. At this point, Qing Xiang spoke again. Members of Yao race only knew that me and Yuan Kun wanted to depose Hung Jun for our own selfish desires. I couldn't be bothered to explain. However, the Khan god insisted on letting you know. After all, as a leader of the Beast clan, Yu Zayun is destined to die. However, the Corpse Ghost King is still likely to witness those seen in the future with his own eyes. Everyone, let's leave it at that for now. After speaking, Qing Xiang got up and stepped down from the throne. He brushed past the Corpse Ghost King and left the ruined hall with Yuan Kun. Is that true? Zhao Yun whispered to Hung Jun, who was standing on the bridge together with her. Hung Jun suddenly said, actually, I even saw a scene with you, Zhao Yun, before this. Me? Zhao Yun asked, what about me? Hung Jun said seriously, you have completed your mission. The sentence only elicited a puzzled expression from Zhao Yun. Li Jinglong walked on a deserted street. His martial robe was covered in mud. We meet again. A voice said in the darkness. Li Jinglong carried the sword of wisdom on his back and stood solemnly like a mountain. Thank you for taking care of me along the way. Li Jinglong said, even today, I still remember your kindness for sending Hung Jun out of the Yajin palace. Half of Qing Xiang's body emerged from the darkness and said in a deep voice, you are just going with the flow. Since you know that you're going to fight a battle that you have no chance of winning, why did you come? This is my mission. Li Jinglong said slowly. Qing Xiang narrowed his eyes. He wanted to pry into Li Jinglong's heart, but the man's thoughts were convoluted and he could not grasp anything substantial. The only thing he managed to grasp was Li Jinglong's thoughts about Hung Jun. Perhaps, Li Jinglong's blood-covered right hand twirled the golden arrow between his fingers and said, do you want to fight in advance? Qing Xiang sneered and rose to the sky from that street. He transformed into a golden-winged giant peng and turned to fly away. The exorcists who were hiding in the dark houses and ruins appeared one after another. Li Jinglong couldn't hold back. His hand trembled slightly. He thought that it was a close call. If they had fought in this alley without the help of his companions, he might have been killed by Qing Xiang first. Where have you been? A bare-chested Morrigan swept away the influence of the Khan god's dream just like the rest of the exorcists. As soon as they woke up from it, Lu Su suggested to come out to find Li Jinglong, afraid that something might have happened to him. Li Jinglong said blankly, I. Li Jinglong pressed his temple and tried hard to recall. Tai asked, was that the Khan god's power just now? It was too powerful. Lu Su muttered, is that the truth? Chu Yangxi said to everyone, maybe it is the truth, but maybe it's just a partial truth. Li Jinglong grunted. Lu Su noticed that his hands were covered in blood and asked, what happened to your hand? Li Jinglong frowned and found that he was holding a strip of cloth in his hand. After unfolding it, there was something written in blood in it that said, act according to the situation. Everyone. It was in Li Jinglong's calligraphy. What did it mean for him to write a note and hold it within his own hand? As the sun rose and set, Hung Jun remained leaning in front of the mansion, looking at the pale sky outside. Zhao Yun was guarding him loyally without asking any question. Hung Jun fell asleep at some point. He suddenly woke up in the middle of the night and sat up. A soft sound came from the beam. The white fox's tail hung on the beam and flicked gently. Was I wrong? Yu Zayun asked softly. Everyone will die. Hung Jun leaned in front of the bed and said, the only difference was in how they die, whether at birth, by old age or illness. Death is a something determined by the heavens. Like your mother. Yu Zayun said again, she is the woman I admire the most. Hung Jun asked, do you regret it? It's just a little uncomfortable, Yu Zayun replied. Hong Jun also said, I did have a moment of confusion. I'm both a Yao and a human. It wasn't my intention for the human race to drive out the Yao race. I also didn't want to see the Yao race slaughter the human race. Yu Zayun said, but the facts are set. We can't change all of this. Hung Jun gently replied, does my father and my mother count? Yu Zayun said, but they still end up dying. Hung Jun said, Fox King, are you willing to burn your life to create a ray of light that would illuminate in the darkness of a long night, or would you prefer to be an endless rain that falls on this land for thousands of years? Yu Zeyun. Yu Zeyun leaped off the roof beam and landed on the bed. Hung Jun said in a daze, when it comes to facing death, no one understands it better than me. I used to treat every single day I spent with Jinglong and the exorcism department as the last day of my life. Now that I was thinking about it, those days in Chang'an are really beautiful. Hung Jun said, just like the blooming flowers in spring and the red leaves covering the plains and the mountains in autumn. Although it's very short, I've seen it all. The mushroom doesn't know the day and night, the cricket doesn't know spring and autumn. After 100 years, me and Li Jinglong will be gone. We won't be like you who would be able to witness the future and witness that doomed end. But does that really matter? Hung Jun stared sideways at Yu Zeyun and continued, I still believe that dash. The sun rose and a bird's cry came from afar, interrupting Hung Jun's words. He rolled over and got down from the bed with the Kinji chain. Then he asked, where's the corpse ghost king? Waiting for you. The corpse ghost king said from outside the door. I'm a stubborn person. Hung Jun put away the peacock jade plume and the pentacolor sacred knives. Even if he couldn't activate their powers yet, he could still use them with the fight against Qing Xiang. He pushed the door open. It was a sunny day. The sunlight immediately poured in and fell on his body. Let's go then. Hung Jun said. Li Jinglong and the other exorcists left the ruins of the exorcist department. Everyone packed up as the sun rose high. Li Jinglong spread out his hands and looked at the piece of fabric in his hands. Everyone. Li Jinglong turned around and faced his companions, saying, although the art of war advised that we shouldn't fight battles unprepared. Everyone looked at Li Jinglong quietly. But the arrow is already on the bow and it has to be shot, Li Jinglong continued. Even if ahead was a mountain of swords and a sea of fire, I have to go. I implore my brothers to follow me. Everyone cheered in unison. Li Jinglong turned around and got on his horse. The exorcists got on their houses as well and rode off toward the Ming Hall one after another under the morning sun. Baying the Ming Hall, nearly 100,000 Yao were waiting. The golden-winged giant Peng spread its wings and circled down. The platform was surrounded by all sorts of Yao while Yuan Kun stood quietly on top of the platform. Qing Xiang turned into his human form as the sun shone on the snow-white rebuilt platform. Anything? Yuan Kun asked. Nothing. Qing Xiang replied. The two exchanged information this simply. Qing Xiang chose to ambush Li Jinglong last night but he didn't get any useful information. Yuan Kun replied indifferently, let's begin. Qing Xiang said, they haven't arrived yet. Around the platform, the makeshift brick walls were densely packed with all kinds of birds. The aquatic clan, 10,000s of beast Yao and the avian clan gathered. Then, the sound of armor clanking followed. 50,000 soldiers then fell in battle rode under the leadership of the corpse ghost king and surrounded the platform as well, forming a circle. Members of the Yao race, the avian clan, the beast clan, the aquatic creatures and corpse clan, everyone. I believe that last night, you all saw the Kun god's prophecy. Qing Xiang went straight to the point. From today onwards, there will no longer be a place for our clan. Hung Jun mixed in with the army of the soldiers who fell in battle. He pushed his helmet up slightly and stared at Du Hanqing who was walking up the steps in front of the platform. He was dragging his shackles, his clothes were ragged and he looked so weak that a gust of wind could blow him down at any time. After climbing up the platform, he helplessly turned his head and looked into the distance. Thank you. Hung Jun whispered, let me take care of the rest. On the platform, Qing Xiang said in a clear voice, the reason for that is because the Yao King of our race colluded with the exorcists of the human race. I disagree. Shouted a voice immediately. Hung Jun. Hung Jun turned his head to look for the owner of that voice. On the high wall, there were 2 golden pheasants, one red and one green. Hung Junjun didn't expect that in the end, it was Fat Green and Skinny Red who would spoke up for him and almost burst into tears. His Majesty has gone through countless tribulations. Fat Green said, if he didn't join forces with the exorcists to eradicate Mara, we all would have become subordinates of Enlushan. Have you forgotten how our brothers were controlled and used by Mara? Now, you want to burn the bridge after crossing it? Skinny Red whispered, are you looking for death? If the golden winged giant pen becomes the Yao King, the first one it will eradicate is the 2 of us and the Carp Yao. Fat Green whispered, either way, we won't survive. The Yao clan instantly became restless. Qing Xiang's face turned livid as he shouted angrily, how dare you? Who gave you the right to speak? It was Master Qing Xiang who said it before. A woman standing under the platform said softly, from here on, there will no longer be the danger of being attacked by the devil Qi, and the pain of displacement. We will always remember that it was His Majesty and the exorcist of the human race who had laid their lives on the line in order to achieve this. However, for things to end up in this way. Hung Jun turned his head again towards the speaker. It seemed that he had seen this woman before, but he couldn't remember who she was. Who are you? Even with Qing Xiang's sharp eyes, he couldn't determine this woman's origin. I'm just a lowly peony Yao from Mount Longmen. The woman was a flower Yao who used to be under the control of the Lust Gunao. She continued, the Zenshi of Exorcism Department, Li Jinglong, saved my life. They have also saved the Kun god who was imprisoned by the 4 Gunao at that time. How can you repay kindness with enmity? Instantly, the crowd of Yao was in an uproar. Many Yao didn't believe Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun accounts of things. Qing Xiang never expected that this situation would occur. Fortunately for them, another party shouted, Li Jinglong's sins are monstrous. We will never forgive him. My brothers, sisters, parents, and relatives died in the hands of Li Jinglong. The voice came from the Beast clan. Yu Zeyun suddenly turned his head and saw that it was the Fox clan under her command. Back then, their family was burned to death by Li Jinglong during the case of the imperial examination. Where is Li Jinglong? Hung Jun's heartbeat was running faster and faster. He kept looking for the exorcists out of the corners of his eyes, but none of them made an appearance. Yu Zeyun didn't scold the Fox clan under her command. For a moment, the square under the platform became full of clamoring and flooded with the sound of uproar. There was no lack of bloodthirsty, cruel, and murderous Yao here, but there were also those who were mild of temperament and have close relationship with the human race. However, whether it was the ferocious beast race, avian or aquatic race, their thoughts were mostly similar. They did not want to be the subordinates of Mara. This was because the Yao who were under the control of the devil Qi lose their sense of self and started killing for the sake of killing. This went against the nature of the avian and beast race, who wouldn't care about fighting if their stomachs were full. Moreover, Enlushan didn't even let the most loyal blood Yao go. He actually swallowed his own generals to replenish his devil Qi. This was really terrifying. The human races can't be left alive. Another tiger Yao roared. The Yao were in a heated discussion. Yao born from ferocious beast and birds of prey attached great importance to the division of territory. But there is only one Yao king. The other wolf Yao shouted, I only listen to the Mahamayuri. Hundreds of thousands of Yao race members argued incessantly, their emotions surging. Seeing that a civil war was about to break out, only the soldiers that fell in battle remained in formation, extremely disciplined. Suddenly the ruckus gradually died down and was replaced by another commotion. End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 220. Uniting of the Kun and Peng God. The array in front of Qing Xiang flashed and a man in black robe appeared. The flesh on his face was rotting and was slowly emitting black miasma. It was Yang Kuozhong. At that moment, when the Yao saw Mara appeared, all of them became terrified. They were afraid of those days when they couldn't even differentiate between day and night, as they all turned into mindless killers. They couldn't help being stunned and retreated backward out of fear. They all thought that Mara had been eliminated, and thus they couldn't help feeling a powerful clamor in their heart. Now that Mara reappeared, they couldn't fight their own instinct and were compelled to lower their heads. The devil's power was greatly reduced, Yuan Kun said slowly. But the devil seed hasn't been destroyed. The situation that you're worried about won't happen again. The Yao stared at the man who appeared on the platform with vigilance. At this time, it was as if Yang Qiuzhong had become the main focus. On the platform, Hong Jun kept his head down and remained silent. Qing Xiang, what are you trying to do? Yu Zeyun asked sternly. Qing Xiang replied in a deep voice, when Mara appears, all the Yao in the divine land must obey his commands. Even the Yao King in the human race must obey him. Isn't there such a thing? The corpse ghost king roared, Qing Xiang. Are you possessed? Yu Zeyun shouted, don't be afraid of him. He hardly has any powers anymore. The Yao clan calmed down, but their fear continued to spread through the platform. None of them dared to resist Mara's tyrannical power. The beasts bowed their heads to show their obedience. The birds lowered their heads slightly while trembling in fear. The feathers on their chest were slightly open. Sister. Yang Qiuzhong smiled slightly towards Yu Zeyun. Yu Zeyun gasped slightly, with tears in her eyes. Qing Xiang said slowly, what if we become the next Mara? Think about your king. A clear voice sounded from the top of the wall outside the platform. Under the sunlight, Li Jinglong and the other exorcists finally appeared. Each of them was brandishing their own artifacts of Akalanatha and pointed them at the center of the platform. Qing Xiang smiled strangely, finally our guests are here. You've made us wait for far too long. Li Jinglong said in a deep voice, during the war between the human race, Yao race, and the Mara, how many here followed your Yao King? Did he, who he fought on his own, ever thought that this day would come? Li Jinglong pointed the sword of wisdom in his hand. Hong Jun in the center of the platform raised his head. I am in charge of the exorcism department of the divine land. Li Jinglong shouted in a deep voice. Today, I only came here to kill Mara. I have no intention to interfere with the internal affairs of the Yao race. Rise up and defend your king. I'm willing to make a pledge that would last for thousands of years on behalf of the human emperor. As long as the exorcism department exists, no innocent will be killed. All of the Yao stirred again as Yuan Kun and Qing Xiang went to the center of the platform. Qing Xiang pressed one hand on the shoulder of Hong Jun and said earnestly, the Kun God has already let everyone see the future 1,000 years later and the fate of the Yao race. How trustworthy is that promise? Human are all treacherous and sinister. My fellow clansmen, take down the exorcists. Once you do, your king will no longer be under their spell. Hong Jun immediately shouted, don't do it. Li Jinglong drew his bow and pointed the arrow at Yang Qiuzhong on the platform. Below the platform, Hong Jun felt his heart jolted suddenly. Yuan Kun looked at the top of the wall from a distance and spat an order, take him down. In an instant, the arrow left the bowstring. The exorcists leaped and rushed towards the platform. The Yao clan was suddenly in chaos. Under the command of Yuan Kun and Qing Xiang, the avian race soared into the air one after another, while the aquatic creatures turned into their human form and leaped into the air to release ice crystals at the exorcists. Meanwhile, the beast clan were divided. The bears and the foxes, who had grudges against the exorcists, rushed up to the top of the wall to attack Li Jinglong. The rest of the tigers and the leopards were stunned for a moment, not knowing what to do. Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun stepped back. Hong Jun stared at the two of them nervously, as if he was waiting for a certain event to unfold. Follow me and save High Majesty. The corpse ghost king raised his bony right hand, holding a rusty bronze sword in his hand. Follow me and save His Majesty. Yu Zeyun shouted. She then jumped into the air and rushed towards the platform. In an instant, 50,000 soldiers who fell in battles and a horde of beasts rushed up the steps and rushed towards the detained Hung Jun. The real Hung Jun was wrapped in the torrent, galloping on his horse. There was chaos everywhere. The powers of the exorcists could hardly resist the waves of the Yao attacking them. Qing Xiang whistled and mobilized the avian race while the aquatic creatures were resisting the attacks of the corpse ghost king. Meanwhile, Yuan Kun was muttering a spell. The platform suddenly burst into a strong light and began to rotate. The arrangement of the kun and the pen immediately came into effect. The flow of time around the platform became extremely slow, and the movements of the 50,000 soldiers who fell in battles and the horde of beasts involuntarily slowed down. However, the avian and the aquatic creatures were not affected by this spell. They began to madly attack the army led by Yu Zeyun and the corpse ghost king. In an instant, the flock of eagles spread their wings and grabbed the soldiers that were charging at the front of their horses. Then, they threw them off the platform and the soldiers with their armor were instantly torn to pieces. The corpse ghost king and Yu Zeyun did their best to break through the impact of the time spell array on the platform. The situation had reversed again. The exorcist reached below the platform, but they were also affected by the time spell array and their sprint forward was slowed down considerably. Hung Jun turned his head to look at the Kun god and the giant pen, and gritted his teeth towards Qing Xiang, but Qing Xiang only raised his hand, and he was pushed away and became trapped mid-air. An extremely strange scene appeared around the platform. The exorcists, the beast, and the soldiers who fell in battles were rushing towards the platform, but their movements were extremely slow. The closer they were to the core of the time spell array, the harder it was to break through. What awaits you will be death. Yuan Kun pulled off his blindfold cloth and stood next to time spell array. Meanwhile, Qing Xiang turned around and they faced Yang Kuozhong in the formation. Yang Kuozhong turned sideways and glanced at Qing Xiang. Let's live in this world in a different way. Qing Xiang said, where if you ask for benevolence, you'll get benevolence. Have you made up your mind? Come on. Yang Kuozhong said, I'm ready. Then Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun raised their hands at the same time and cast a spell. Yang Kuozhong, who was in the center, screamed in pain and exuded a strong magic energy which poured into the body of Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun. Yang Kuozhong's flesh and skin instantly broken down and in a flash, his Jiao form was revealed. Then, the Jiao shattered in the wind, leaving behind the Yao soul, his 7 Po and the devil seed that was surrounded by 3 Hun. No. Hung Jun, who was suspended in the air and couldn't get away, shouted wildly. Hung Jun Li Jinglong called out. The bodies of Yuan Kun and Qing Xiang shone brightly. A sudden huge flash of light emitted from the platform, and within the core of the time spell array, the light exploded in all directions. With a loud bang, the exorcists, the army of soldiers who fell in battle, the horde of beasts, and even all the rest of the Yao who were under the platform were swept away by this huge force. The high walls collapsed as if they were swept by a hurricane. The entire inner city of Luoyang, with the Ming Hall as the center, was destroyed in an instant. When the dust settled, an ancient devil beast the size of a palace appeared. It had 12 wings and its body was pitch dark. Under the light of the sun, it reflected a strange blue light. Its body was huge as a whale and it floated in the air. There were 48 eyeballs on its head and tiny galaxies seemed to be rotating slowly in its eyeballs. Countless tentacles protruded from its body and swept through most of Luoyang. The moment the giant beast appeared, the world turned pitch black. Then it opened its mouth and roared. I am the ruler of the divine land. Thunder rumbled faintly in the sky. The Yao looked up and saw a sharp horn on the giant beast's forehead. It seemed that the horn was attracting lightning as thunder and lightning gathered on the horn. When it waved its tentacles, entire street was swept across, felling houses and high towers on the ground. Damn, what's this? Mo Rajin shouted. Why didn't anyone mention that we would be fighting this monster? Kun God. Yu Zhou shouted in fear. Qiu Yangxi was also stunned. No one had ever expected that Yuan Kun and Qing Xiang would merge into one and turned into such a terrifying monster. Its huge body completely crushed all the attacks it received and its tentacles spread out like an inescapable net. Every time it lashed out, lightning and frost would appear. It seemed as if it was unstoppable. One of its tentacles wrapped around Du Hanqing, who was pretending to be Hung Jun, and placed him in front of its wide mouth and sharp teeth. Lightning flashed from its horn, forming a circle of charged lightning. A deep and hoarse voice echoed in the sky. All the eyeball on the monster's body spewed out black flames as a roar was heard, Li Jinglong dash. The corpse ghost king shouted from the ground, prepare the hooked ropes. Drag it down. The soldiers that fell in battles spread out to find cover. They shot hooked ropes in the air with their crossbows. However, as soon as the hook reached the ancient giant beast's body, its tentacles swept the ropes away and the soldiers were thrown off their feet. Send me up. Li Jinglong shouted towards Yuzhou. Send me up. At the same time, Hung Jun ordered Zhao Yun. A long fish rose into the air, carrying Li Jinglong towards the mouth of the ancient giant beast. It's all up to you, Li Jinglong. The voice of Yuzhou shouted. Li Jinglong drew his bow and knocked an arrow as he stood on Yuzhou's back, who was flying towards Hung Jun. At this moment, his hands were trembling but he was unable to fire the arrow. Hung Jun turned his head and looked at Li Jinglong with a trace of despair in his eyes. The 48 eyes of the ancient giant beast blazed with black flames as it roared, just like moths to the flame. How foolish! Akalanatha and Dipankara, today is the day your divine powers will be exhausted. Immediately afterwards, thunder bloomed from the ancient giant's beast horn with lightning. The moment Li Jinglong caught a glimpse of it, he released the golden arrow and flew towards Hung Jun. The golden arrow flew towards the ancient giant beast's horn with boundless radiance, but all the tentacles shot out at the same time and wrapped around Li Jinglong. Faster than anyone could react, a clear shout rang out. Hold on tight. The kanji chain flew horizontally and wrapped around Li Jinglong's waist, then dragged Li Jinglong straight out. The ancient giant beast's eyes widened and immediately realized that it had been deceived. It let out a wild roar and all the tentacles turned around and coiled toward the flying boss snake. Yuzhou's body was petrified with electricity. He crashed into the fake Hung Jun and fell from the sky. Qiu Yangxi was running on the ground, chasing the ancient giant beast, when he suddenly saw Hung Jun falling from the sky and immediately felt that something was wrong. He immediately summoned a jiao and soared towards the sky. The white deer, who turned around and flew toward Hung Jun, almost collided with Qiu Yangxi. Hung Jun fell and was able to escape. He instantly transformed into Du Hanqing in the air and was caught by Qiu Yangxi. He and Qiu Yangxi locked gazes at each other as Lu Su rushed over. Both of them were dumbfounded. How could it be you? Qiu Yangxi was shocked. Du Hanqing was about to explain, but the sky became filled with boundless lighting. Lu Su looked up and shouted, he's up there. Qiu Yangxi immediately put Du Hanqing down and he went up to the sky with Lu Su. Du Hanqing angrily complained, don't you care about me at all? Meanwhile, Yuzhou plummeted down from the sky, falling towards some structures. With a boom, a roof collapsed and amidst the falling debris, he transformed into his human form and couldn't help but groan. It hurts. On the battlefield above, the avian creatures were all spread out. The ancient giant beast raised all its tentacles to the sky and flew around Hung Jun and Li Jinglong. Hung Jun hugged Li Jinglong with both arms while standing on top of the flying boss snake. He stood proudly as he faced the ancient giant beast. You dash, the ancient giant beast roared, cannot stop this fate of destruction. Hung Jun and Li Jinglong looked at each other, then they looked at the ancient giant beast. We won't know that until we try. Hung Jun said, haven't any of you realized that something was wrong? Any of you? The black flame became more and more vigorous and suddenly exploded. The ancient giant beast suddenly realized something and roared, Xiaoyu! Xiaoyu! Immediately afterwards, the charging lighting that was filling the sky above the ancient giant beast's sharp horn suddenly disappeared and was replaced by an inconspicuous spatial fluctuation. In an instant, in the sky and on the ground, either those flying or those running, everything froze up. Li Jinglong said, "It's the dream realm." Hong Jun said, "The Zhuangzhou butterfly dream technique." In an instant, the fluctuation turned into a vortex. The vortex expanded with a buzz and then contracted again. Then, Li Jinglong and Hong Jun were sucked into it. Yang Qiuzhong said, "I'll leave it to you." The voice was like a heavy hammer that fiercely knocked on Li Jinglong's mind. Come to think of it, the Kun has the power to foresee the future while the Pen has the power to read the other's heart. They think that they can escape fate, but aren't they also struggling bitterly with tribulations? That night, at the Tenli of Heavenly River, Xiaoyu turned into Yang Qiuzhong and faced Li Jinglong and Hong Jun. "Leave this place." Li Jinglong said, "As long as you are not swallowed, everything should be all right." Yang Qiuzhong said, "My devil power was already depleted and there's nowhere else to go. If not for the Kun and the Pen using their mana to prolong my life, I wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long, although the only reason they did this was so that they could devour me at the last moment. Qing Xiang never feared that I would escape. How could he not leave a mark on my 307 po? Even if I escape from Luoyang and hide to the ends of the earth, they would still be able to find the devil seed." Hong Jun said to Li Jinglong, "Without the sword of wisdom, once they devour Xiaoyu, they simply cannot." The sword of wisdom was in the hands of Derenja from the very beginning. Yang Qiuzhong said, "As early as when your parents died, the sword had already been claimed. Otherwise, how could Kong Xian have been defeated?" Hong Jun suddenly trembled as Li Jinglong said with a deep voice, "Xiaoyu, since you don't want to escape and have nowhere to go anymore, why don't we make a deal?" Yang Qiuzhong did not answer. He only stared at Li Jinglong silently. Hong Jun felt how Li Jinglong tightened his hold on his hand. "After you were devoured, would you be able to retain your own senses?" Li Jinglong said, "How about we make a bet? For a short period of time, I might be able to retain my own senses," Yang Qiuzhong said. "Once your Yao soul merges with the Kun and the Peng." Li Jinglong said, "I need you to influence Yuan Kun to use the Zhuangzhou butterfly dream technique just like during the battle in Chang'an and make me return to the past." "Interesting," Yang Qiuzhong smiled and asked, "What are you going to do?" Hong Jun asked, "Do you still want to go back?" Li Jinglong nodded and said seriously, "I want to see Hong Jun's father." Yang Qiuzhong said, "It was just your dream. It's not the real past. Kong Xian has already entered the cycle of reincarnation. What's the use? You only need to promise me." Li Jinglong said. Yang Qiuzhong asked in a deep voice, "Why would I do that for you?" "If you have a corpse," Li Jinglong said seriously, "I will send your corpse to the dragon subduing tower and release your soul. Whether you want to enter the cycle of reincarnation or return to the dragon subduing tower to keep your father company, it's up to you." Yang Qiuzhong said nothing while Li Jinglong continued, "After you die, all your sins will be settled. Compared to being imprisoned inside the Kun and the Peng's body where you will never have peace. I think the better deal was for you to gain your freedom so you can do as you please." Li Jinglong was about to turn around and leave when Yang Qiuzhong called out, "Wait." Hong Jun and Li Jinglong turned their heads. Yang Qiuzhong said, "Qing Xiang will definitely come to test you tonight. If he sees through your thoughts, all your previous efforts will be wasted." Li Jinglong said, "I will disguise my thoughts." Yang Qiuzhong replied, "Your every move is under the scrutiny of him and Yuan Kun. You have to be careful." Hearing what Yang Qiuzhong said, Li Jinglong already knew that he had acquiesced to his request and that they have reached an agreement. He immediately nodded and said, "There's no need to worry anymore." End chapter.